All right, it is time for a tag video. Hey everyone, it is Shannon, and I'm super excited to be here today and to do this tag for you. This is the DNF tag, and it was created by Gunpowder Fiction and Plot, and I saw it over at Amy from Zoe Beck's channel, and I really enjoyed watching Amy's responses. Amy is awesome at DNFing. I'm always admire the confidence of the DNF. I don't have that so far. I am not a very good DNFer, but we will get to that because we will get to the questions. I will leave a link to Amy's video up above. Highly recommend checking it out. And now let's get on to the questions. So the first one is simply do you DNF? And for me, very rarely, I would say about one title a year. I have realized over time that I am way more likely to speed read something to get to the end of it, or to test something out and let it go and consider it unread. Those are sort of like the two more likely situations. And last year I even had as one of my reading goals to find my way to DNFing, and I eventually realized that generally speaking, I don't DNF. But there's always the exception, so I do DNF about once a year. So I hope the rest of these responses aren't like really weird, but I love talking about books, and I love talking about how we engage with books in different ways, and I actually think these are really great questions. So we're gonna keep going. We're gonna keep going. Number 2, if you DNF a book, does it count towards your books read for the month? So this depends on the situation. If I just read a couple of chapters and realized it wasn't a really good fit for me, no, I'm considering that book unread. If it happens to be a book that I read a sizable chunk of, like 50% or more, I do consider it sort of read. Or also, if I'm reading it for a project, like I'm working through a lot of different book lists that I've created, and if I'm reading it for a project and I decide to DNF it, I do include it in my count because it shows that I attempted that book and have decided not to read that book. So it's an active choice. I gave it a shot, but it's a no. In terms of how I deal with this, there's sort of two different ways because there's my spreadsheet, which I keep all my tracking on, and then there's Goodreads. Most people are familiar with Goodreads, so maybe let's talk about that first. In terms of Goodreads, I have a shelf called Unfinished by Choice. So that is something I created before I had ever heard the term DNF. I keep it as unfinished by choice because it ends up being much, much lower on my shelves for Goodreads, so it's on the second page of shelves, and DNFing would make it on the first page. I also don't super want to highlight publicly the books I DNF. Like, I don't care if you go look through that shelf, but I don't want to highlight that. Like, I know since Goodreads started, now they do have the function where you can add I can't remember what it's called, but like a primary shelf, because it used to just be you could have it as you read something, you're currently reading something, or you want to read something, and now you can add another shelf called DNF that is one of those 4. But again, I don't want to highlight my DNFs, and I've been using Goodreads for so long, like before that function, that I would have to like transfer over those books, and I'm like, you know what, I don't want to, like, that's a lot of work for books that I didn't enjoy. So I have one called Unfinished by Choice. Most of my DNFs end up going there. I think I have a couple of DNFs that I ended up giving 1 star to, because that was, I think, originally my DNF system was to give it 1 star. So if you see that I've given something 1 star, that means either I really, 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 really didn't like it, or I DNF'd it. So, but again, after using the site for 10 years, how I track things has changed a little bit. Then I have my spreadsheet, which is a whole other situation, and I do count it on my spreadsheet, but what I do is I have a column for pages, and I adjust it to the amount of pages that I read. So I count the pages. I also only count the book as a percentage of a book. So if I read a third of the book, instead of putting a 1 count for a book, I would put 0.33. And then I actually gray out the entire row so that it's very clear I DNF'd it, and I do have a place where it indicates it's a DNF. This is on my own personal spreadsheet, not the Brock's spreadsheet. I don't think I include DNFs on the Brock's Let's Read spreadsheet, which if you don't use, you totally should. I'll link it down below. It's an awesome spreadsheet. So it's weird, like, it doesn't, I don't necessarily I guess I would, when I'm doing a monthly reflection, I would indicate that I DNF'd a book, but I wouldn't necessarily count it in my read books. I would count the percentage, which is a bit weird. But as I said, that's the case for books that I'm reading for particular projects or particular reasons. And then on my project list, I would indicate DNF'd, in this month of this year, so that I know not to try and read it later, which is the real goal there. Oh my gosh. Number 3, is there a difference between DNFing and just putting down for a bit? Oh yeah. DNFing means I'm done with you. I'm done. I gave you a shot. You let me down. It's just, no, I'm kind of all or nothing on some things. Or I've given it multiple attempts and really decided we are going no further together. But I do also have, and putting it down for a bit, I have 2 situations, like I have 2 different strategies for this. If I'm putting it down for a while and I can pick up sort of where I left off, or I just sort of forgot about the book, or I'm just like, it just sort of is waning over there, then it's sitting on my currently reading, which is always a pretty high number. It's usually in the 20s. Right now it's a little higher than I'd like, but it happens. Anyway, so if I'm just putting it aside for a bit, it could easily be on my currently reading. If I've actively decided, oh wow, not for right now, I do have a hiatus shelf on Goodreads, but I never look at it. So that's why I leave stuff on my currently reading. So I come back to it every week when I do my reading plan and be like, okay, can some of this come off the shelf yet? And usually I would move something to hiatus when I'm very much at the point where I recognize I will have to start this book from the beginning. So if I can continue where I left off, it can stay on currently reading. If I really need to start from the beginning, then it might migrate to hiatus. So yeah, this has turned into how I do Goodreads. No, but now we are turning the tide, and we're gonna talk some specifics here. Number 4, what popular book have you DNF'd? I actually have a couple because why not? The first one is The Time Traveler's Wife by Audrey and Niffenegger. This is a book that I DNF'd this year. I talked about it more specifically in my mid-year freakout tag, so if you're curious as to more thoughts on that, I'll leave a link to that up above. A pretty popular book that I DNF'd was The Mists of Avalon by Marion Zimmer Bradley. I only bring this up because it's a different kind of situation in terms of the problematic author. You can Google why. I don't want to go into the details. I was very disappointed because I had started reading this in high school. I found it very, very powerful. Then I learned some horrible things about the author, which were revealed after she passed. And so I couldn't do it. Which is just so horrible. But yeah, so that's another one. I was halfway through it, and so now I'm considering it a DNF, or unfinished by choice. The Enchanted by Renee Denfeld. This was the first book that I actually considered DNFing. So this was more like 2014 when I started getting into reading again, for one of the times I started getting back into reading. And everyone loved this book on YouTube. Everyone loved it. And I started reading, I thought it was going to be like magical realism or something like that. I didn't find anything magical about this at all. This was pain and suffering and reality, and anything that wasn't reality didn't feel like magic, I'll tell you that. So I didn't end up reading it all. I did count it as unfinished by choice, and I have it on my spreadsheet, but I bring it up because it's the first book that I actually considered DNFing, and I talked to people about their strategies for DNFing and when do you call it quits? Is it a percentage? Is it a moment? I think with this one, there was something that was such a horrible description of something horrible happening to someone, and I'm like, I'm out. I don't want to live through that. I don't want to see someone else live through that. And I don't mean you should never write or read books on hard topics, but I didn't understand. I think it was the combination of it was presented as impactful and just emotional, and I just found it horrifying depictions. And I'm like, it was not magical. It was at least to 50%. That's, I think, about how much I read. So yeah, no. So, and that was really popular. And then a more recent genre one was the first in the Mistborn series by Brandon Sanderson, The Final Empire. It was, I think, the first book in my sci-fi, fantasy, and weird exploration that I decided, no, I just couldn't do it. To me, it's much more because it has a magic system, it doesn't feel like magic to me, and so it feels like science, and so that just threw me out of the whole fantasy thing. And I only enjoyed like one of the characters, in terms of, as far as I got. So, but I did learn that from that, especially from Mistborn. It took me a while to figure it out, but I learned from that what I was looking for was the enjoyment of a fantasy series that people had around Mistborn. And I wasn't experiencing that with Mistborn, but that didn't mean I couldn't experience that with other books. So I kind of learned a lot from that, but it took a while. So for me, like the fantasy series that I love is The Fiend of Our Tapestry by Guy Gabriel Kay. And that one I love in the way in which I think people love Mistborn. So it's not about the specifics, it's about what you get from the experience. And it was very helpful for me to make that that distinction between the two things, that it doesn't have to be about the specifics. And generally speaking, and I feel like that about hearing people talk about books, even if it's not a book I'm interested in what their experience of reading the book was. We don't always have to agree, right? At least that's how I feel. Number 5, what book do you wish you had DNF'd? It took me a while to find an example for this, but I found it, and that would be Tom Clancy's Splinter Cell by David Michaels. So this is a book that's based on a video game world, and then it's been picked up to be a book-to-film adaptation, which is how it got on my radar, because I like reading book-to-film adaptations. And this was a very unusual situation. Video game, book, movie. Strange, right? And also, it felt like it would be, action-packed and all that kind of stuff. Oh, my gosh. I really, 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 really didn't like this one. It is a thriller, an action-y thriller. It's not espionage, because there's not, the collection of things. But I just found the depictions of violence and the disregard for anyone who was other horrible. It's very, I didn't explain what it's about. So it's a Black Ops, I guess, person, and he goes into, I can't even remember where it was, other countries, and he's looking for information and trying to sort things out, and if anyone gets in his way, he just kills them, and he has no he has no compassion for the fact that, that's a person. Not at all. I know it's an action thriller and that's not sort of what it's going for, but it's so, someone else kills one of your friends and you get to kill them because they did that. Didn't you just do the exact same thing? No. And I did end up pushing through that during Grinchathon last summer. So thank you, Izzy, for running sprints, because otherwise I would never finish it. But all in all, I realized it was not a good pick for me. I didn't like the sort of the cut and dry, I can do anything, because it was very Americana. I can do anything because we're more important and powerful, and there was only 2 female characters, and they were very much the 2 kinds of female characters you're going to have if you're only going to have 2 females. Just no. There's no. So I wish I DNF'd it. I didn't get anything from that, at all. Although it was on my list, it was on my book to film list. I don't know if the movie will ever come out, but whatever. Number 6, do you ever reattempt a book that you have DNF'd? Has this been successful for you? I have tried it, and I don't think I'll ever try it again. And that was American Gods by Neil Gaiman. Oh, I was so disappointed on this. It's urban fantasy. It's Neil Gaiman. Why wouldn't I like it? I don't know. I know exactly. And so I DNF'd this twice at the exact same moment. And what I learned from that this is turned into lessons learned from DNFing, is to take notes, to actually indicate somewhere on my spreadsheet why I DNF something, because it's okay, this is interesting, and this is kind of cool, and look, that's a bit weird, and whatever, and then all of a sudden it's yeah, no, I'm out, I don't like that, I don't want to read about that, I don't like that. So I tried it twice. It's officially DNF'd. I'm not going to go back to it. I might watch the series. I don't know. It was a gender dynamic thing, and I was just no. It's just, no. Yeah. Number 7, what do you do with the books that you DNF? Generally speaking, I donate them, or I ask around if anyone I know would want them. If they happen to be any kind of art book, or have pictures or illustrations, I will use them for collage or art project fodder. So, and even if they don't have pictures, every once in a while I do keep a couple of paperbacks on hand for art projects. So, but I let them go. I don't feel the need to keep anything they've DNF'd. It might be different if it was like a gift or something, but I don't think I've ever DNF'd a gift. Number 8, do you choose more or less risky titles because of your stance on DNFing? I do have a couple authors that I won't read anymore. Marion Zimmer Bradley, for reasons because of the author. No, that's not true. Neil Gaiman, I'm still on the fence on Neil Gaiman. I still love some of his stuff. Oh my God, Neverwhere. Loved it. And the Graveyard Book, loved it. But American Gods, my goodness, I couldn't get behind that. But I have decided to not try any more Sanderson. I did read Perfect State last summer to give him another shot, and I'm like, no. And this one had a lot of gender dynamics things, and I'm like, yeah, I'm not reading this. And then what else did I pick? So, some people that are still on the fence. So William Faulkner, I read The Sound and the Fury. My review of that isn't live anymore because I privatized all my reviews, but I think it is the one with the most thumbs down. But there is something there. I just wasn't getting it. So I didn't DNF it. I did finish it, but I can't decide whether I want to try something else. If you have read a lot of Faulkner and you have a suggestion for our next one to try, feel free to let me know. And then also, gotta say, Jane Austen. I read Pride and Prejudice, and I was like, I'm not getting what people get out of this. Oh, I feel horrible saying that because this is Amy's favorite book. I'm so sorry. That was a horrible spot to end. Oh my gosh. Well, I can't remember. Is it Northanger Abbey? The one that's a second chance romance and the guy is a captain. I do want to try that one, but I feel like she might not be a good pick for me in terms of an author. So I don't know. I think I'm more likely again to test books out, and I think I might be inclined to try and see if I can keep that up better as a practice in terms of testing out a chapter or two, or even I can tell in a few pages usually in terms of tone or like the vibe of a book. And I think that might be a better shot at increasing my chances of enjoying the books that I want to enjoy and not getting out of like feeling the FOMO. Because there's tons of popular books that I have obviously had horrible track record with. A lot of what I read, I have these books out for like other tags, but a lot of what I read is not necessarily books that people are talking about. So I think I just need to come to terms with, like, in terms of the genre stuff, like sci-fi, fantasy, urban fantasy, and romance too. I think those I like to keep tabs on the new stuff and the cool stuff. But generally speaking, if I don't like it, I should get better at just letting it go. And so maybe I will end up DNFing more. I don't know. I usually just push through. So I don't know. That's such a weird. I felt weird about doing this tag, but I thought the questions were so great, and as long as it promotes good discussion about books, I think that's good. So I hope it's okay that I did the tag, even though I am not the best DNFer, but I think it's a fun thing to talk about. And I do have a fair amount of time to read, so if I had less time to read, I think I would be stricter on DNFing, or more likely to have stuff just wane on my currently reading indefinitely. So there are the answers to my question. If you would like to do this tag, feel free to do the tag. I think it has been making the rounds, but if it hasn't made the rounds to you yet, feel free to do it. I will leave the questions down below for you to check out. I didn't pick people to tag because I'm not sure when I'm going to post this video. But if you do like being tagged, let me know, because I'm happy to tag people. My tag release schedule is a bit all over the place. So so there are my answers to the DNF tag. Maybe I will DNF something really soon. Who knows? Thank you so much for watching.